Okay, let's get into this. You sent over some really fascinating discussions about an anime ending. Specifically, it's all about this character, Ryuga, right?
That's the one. Yeah, there's a huge amount of debate among fans about what actually happened to him after season 4.
Right, and we've got all these different takes, arguments for him being dead, arguments against, thoughts on why it's so ambiguous.
And even some digging into what the creators might have been thinking.
Exactly. So our mission today basically is to dive into all these fan theories, the creator choices, and try to figure out what makes the most sense based on what we actually have.
Sounds good. And the starting point for a lot of this, it seems, is this split interpretation. Is he gone or isn't?
Yeah, and one of the first things people point to is that brief cameo of L-Drago right at the very end of season 4.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, that's like clear proof, a sign he's not really gone, maybe setting up a return if they'd done more seasons.
And the core argument there is pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
We didn't see him die. No body, no burial scene. It's that classic trope.
You don't see the body.
Did it really happen? Exactly. It leaves that door wide open.
It definitely does. That lack of visual confirmation is powerful fuel for fan theories and, well, hope, really.
But then you've got the other side of the argument. They're saying, well, hang on, maybe he did die, just differently.
The more sci-fi or fantasy take on it.
Precisely. The idea floating around is that his physical body was like converted into energy, and that energy now rests in the cosmic realm.
Okay.
And they draw a direct line to what happened with Storm Pegasus earlier in the series.
So using the show's own internal logic, kind of?
Right. They're arguing that within this universe, our normal ideas about death, burial, bodies, they might not always apply.
So the lack of a corpse isn't necessarily proof of survival in that context.
Exactly. It's just a different kind of ending.
That's actually a really interesting point. Trying to find consistency within the established rules of that world, even the fantastical ones.
Now, here's where it gets even more complex. The manga.
Yes. The source material divergence.
Yeah, these discussions really highlight that the anime creators didn't stick to the original manga story for Ryuga's ending.
Which happens a lot in adaptations, but it always raises questions.
Apparently in the manga, his journey just keeps going. It doesn't have that abrupt, ambiguous end after season 4.
So the immediate question becomes, why the change? Why did the anime team decide to go down a different path?
Well, a few possibilities are thrown around. One is just practical stuff, pacing, maybe runtime.
Like they only had so many episodes to wrap things up.
Could be. Maybe continuing the manga storyline properly would have taken too much screen time that they just didn't have budgeted.
That makes sense. Production constraints are always a factor.
Another idea is maybe they wanted to shift focus, bring in new characters.
So Ryuga's departure, however you interpret it, makes way for the next generation of bladers.
Possible. And of course, there's the dramatic angle. A big sacrifice, even if it's just perceived, really ramps up the emotional stakes.
Well,
right?
Even if it means deviating from the manga, that kind of ending can have a huge impact on the audience.
It's a classic narrative choice, even if it causes this kind of debate later.
Those are all pretty common reasons for adaptations to change. Creative choices, logistical. It's rarely just a simple translation.
So digging deeper, the discussion also points to specific plot points in the anime that seem to, let's say, contribute to this ambiguity.
Like specific events that maybe felt a bit off.
Yeah, exactly. One that comes up a lot is Goji's role, his continued meddling, taunting Ryuga.
Right, which eventually leads to Ryuga breaking the Zeus barrier, that huge defensive thing.
And some fans felt that whole sequence seemed a bit, forced, almost like it was constructed just to lead to Ryuga's fate.
Engineered, maybe, to justify what happens next.
That's the feeling some got. The argument is, if you took Doji's interference and that whole barrier incident out,
Ryuga's internal struggles might have felt more central, more organic.
Exactly. More grounded in his character arc, potentially avoiding that whole cosmic death scenario and maybe keeping it closer to the manga's path.
That's a valid critique. When a plot point feels too much like the author's hand pushing things, it can pull you out of the story a bit. Focusing on his internal conflict could have been powerful.
So if you're trying to make sense of all this, trying to wrap your head around Ryuga's fate, what do these sources suggest?
Well, a few key things seem important for fans navigating this.
Okay.
First, definitely consult the original manga if you can, or look for official creator comments. That's likely where the most complete picture lies.
Right, go to the source if possible. Makes sense.
Second, remember that things like converting a body to energy, that's often more of a storytelling device, A
metaphor, almost. Not literal in-universe physics.
Pretty much. It's a way to convey an ending without being strictly literal. And third, there's this advice to just be patient.
Patient.
Meaning maybe an official answer or clarification could still come. Future projects, maybe. Who knows?
Okay, so don't assume the story's completely closed.
Exactly. And that L-Drago camp. The sources lean towards it being more like an Easter egg.
A nod to the fans, not a definite clue about his survival.
That seems to be the read. A little surprise, but maybe not something to build a whole theory on regarding his ultimate destiny.
That puts a different spin on it. Okay, shifting gears slightly. The discussions also touched on something else, didn't they? About other characters.
Yeah, this point about missed opportunities for broader character development in that.
Right, we got bits about Aguma, Chris, King, but a lot of the other Keyblade besides the main group.
Their stories weren't really explored much, were they, before or after the main plot?
Not really. And the argument made is that delving into their personal stories, maybe flashbacks, side episodes, could have really enriched the whole thing.
Deepened the audience connection, maybe made the group dynamics more interesting.
Yeah, and even potentially opened doors for spin-offs or future stories.
It's a good point. Sometimes focusing too narrowly on the A-plot means you miss chances to build out the world and make it feel more lived in.
It's a reminder that those side characters can add a lot of texture.
Definitely. Makes the whole narrative feel richer, more immersive.
So when we pull all these threads together, the fan arguments, the manga difference, the plot points, it's pretty clear Ryuga's fate is complicated.
Yeah, intentionally ambiguous or maybe just accidentally ambiguous. It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But the result is the same.
The lack of concrete proof, that deviation from the source material, the hint of future possibilities, it all fuels this ongoing debate, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it really shows the power of storytelling, how it can spark such passionate discussion and how differently people connect with these worlds.
So for you, the listener, trying to sort of get the main takeaways here.
I think the core thing is that tension, right? Between wanting definitive closure and the, well, dramatic possibilities that ambiguity offers.
Yeah, and the advice seems to be, check the original source for maybe a different perspective.
And understand those common sci-fi or fantasy storytelling trope, like the cosmic energy idea.
Which, okay, might not satisfy everyone wanting a clear yes or no.
But it does offer a kind of spiritual resolution within the anime's universe, at least, a way to close his arc thematically.
And this whole deep dive, it also really shows how those creative choices, changing the manga plot, focusing here instead of there, have ripple effects.
Big time. On the story itself, on fan reception, everything.
That point about maybe missing out on developing other characters really highlights how valuable exploring multiple perspectives can be for making a story feel, I don't know, more complete and memorable.
For sure. It builds a stronger connection overall.
So what does this all mean for Ryuga's legacy and the legacy of this series?
Well, it kind of suggests that maybe the questions left hanging are just as compelling, sometimes even more so, than neat answers.
Keeps people talking, keeps the story alive in forums and discussions like this one.
Exactly. Maybe that ambiguity surrounding Ryuga isn't really a flaw in the storytelling.
But maybe more like proof of the character's impact and the audience's lasting interest.
That's a great way to put it. It shows he resonated deeply.
All right, so here's a final thought for you to kind of chew on. How often, in stories we love, or maybe even in real-life events, does the lack of a perfect, tied-up ending actually do more?
More to fuel conversation, our own interpretation.
Yeah, more than a conclusion where every single question is answered ever could.